How good's that?
Hey guys, giving you a bit of an update on the 21T300i. I've had this for about 6 months now, done about 25 hours and put about 1,000 Ks on the clock so far. So I thought I'm just going to run through what I like about the bike, what I don't like about the bike, whether there's many, what I like to do to the bike moving forwards, and the other types of terrain and riding I want to do moving ahead too. So pretty much the first thing for me is I haven't had like you've seen in some of the earlier videos, a two-stroke for a long time, and was deliberating between going to, from a 450 to a two-stroke or staying on a 450. Being from a motocross style background in the past, off-road was sort of new to me. Anyway, been wanting to get a two-stroke for a long time, so went to Jason at Mototech KTM in Geelong and decided that 300 was the bike for me. He hooked me up, got me all set up with the bike, and was pretty keen to get it out on the track. First couple of rides were just pretty cruisy, sort of rides with some mates through some trails, learning the bike, learning the feel of the bike, how the 300 ran. Really enjoyed the torquiness of this two-stroke. So when I was a little bit tired or being a little bit lazy, I could just torque it up the hills or through the trails. I didn't have to hit power band all the time and be right at the peak power like a normal 250 or 125 motocross bike. Yeah, fell in love with it very quickly, very light. That was probably the biggest thing I noticed straight away, was how light and flickable this thing is. Jumping through the trails and stuff, cruising through all the little bumps and whoops and different things here and there. It was just really easy on this, and it just didn't feel like I had to work super hard on it to get it to move around. Probably on the first couple of rides, I was just getting my riding style in, working out how I liked things to be set up from levers and those types of things, and yeah, pretty much didn't do too much else to the bike at that stage. It was really just getting a feel for the bike, what I liked, how it worked in the bush. So from there, I did a couple more trail rides, a bit more in depth, a little bit more, out in the sort of the boggy sort of areas of the trails around home, and sort of tried out something a little bit different, and it really came into its own in those areas. And I just found after riding for 2 or 3 hours, I still had plenty of energy to keep going. It wasn't draining the absolute shit out of me, which for me was a really big thing. I wanted something that I could spend most of the day on, and ride the trails. I also didn't know how far I would get out of a tank at that stage, and I've learnt pretty quickly around, on average, about 100 Ks out of a tank is about what I get. So most general trail rides and single trails and stuff like that, I actually find that it's pretty good through them sort of areas, and I generally get away with a tank of fuel. So after doing a few rides out in the bush with some mates and my brother, getting things sorted out, seeing how I enjoyed the bike and the type of power it was producing, it also didn't feel like it was super quick, but it was really deceiving. You'd be out with the boys on 450s and you weren't working really hard to keep up with them, while they were giving their 450s a bit of a handful. And it just didn't chew through tyres super quick, doesn't stretch the chain out like a 450 did. I kind of was looking at it from a maintenance perspective, and I was like, geez, this thing's actually is really good, really happy with it, and basically went from there. So the next thing I did was took it out to a motocross track. Probably not the best conditions to ride on the motocross track. It was very dry, very windy, and I hadn't ridden motocross for about 3 years since I broke my leg and tore my Achilles, and yeah, it was a heap of fun. I just love smashing out 20-minute motos, and yeah, not the fastest bloke in the world these days, and the suspension was definitely pretty soft when I come up short on some of the jumps, but all in all, it was a heap of fun. And trying to actually keep traction down on a two-stroke on a motocross track, you just want to ride it like a motocross bike. It's really hard not to ride it like a 250 two-stroke, which is awesome. There's nothing wrong with that. I think riding a two-stroke like that is a heap of fun, and just hearing that bike on the pipe's cool. On the flip side, yeah, probably was a little bit soft, like I said. Some of the sharp edge bumps it didn't like on the motocross track and things like that. But I still haven't really touched much with the suspension at this stage. That's on my list of things to do, but haven't done too much else other than going a click harder in the rear and really just riding the bike as it is from stock. So that was a really cool getting out on the track, and I want to do more track riding in the future. I want to get out to Ride Park and stuff, which is down here, and hit some bigger jumps and bits and pieces, and actually, you know, ruts and things that didn't quite form up on the track that I was at, which was Bacchus Marsh at the time. From there, I think the next big ride was I did a 2-day adventure ride with Mile Munchin Adventures, and that was through the Victorian High Country. Something I'd never done before, never been up into the high country other than to go snowboarding when it snows in the middle of winter. So me and my brother decided to get out and try something really different for us, and didn't know what to expect, didn't know what the trails were going to be like, didn't know how the two-stroke would go, given the fact that it's more adventure riding than it is single trails or trail riding or motocross. And you know what, I did really well. Yeah, I definitely would have got more tired than a lot of the boys on the 450s and the other 4-strokes that could sort of chug along up some of the hills and things, where I had to kind of keep on the band and, you know, keep in that power range and just stop the bike from fouling when we were doing longer trips. You know, sitting on 80 k's an hour for about 30 k's was probably the worst thing that we had to do on day 2 on this. But the first day was magic. The thing ran awesome, and you know, we did about 100 k's in the first day, and I still had a decent amount of fuel left. We did plenty of hills and things like that, and wide open trails, and you know, it was really cool. It was good to hit some of those 4-wheel drive little, I don't know what you call them on the tracks, but they're like little, to me they were jumps, you know, hitting them at speed and jumping over the hole, because, you know, why slow down? It's always fun to just keep going. So yeah, that was really cool, and I'd set up my phone on the bike with a 12-volt charging kit to go along with it, so I could sort of, you know, see where the trails were going and keep the phone charged as I was plodding along. Yeah, so in the first day, you know, tried creek crossings and all sorts of different things, and really different terrain as you go through the high country. Down low, it can be quite pleasant and really you know, more like local down here, where you get the ferns and the softer dirt, where you can really hook up and get traction. And then the next thing you know, you're coming up a hill and it's just rocky and shaly, and the wheels just spinning everywhere as I'm just losing traction and hitting band, and yeah, become a little bit sketchy. So yeah, that was day 1. We cruised all the way down to Dargo for that. Stayed there the night. The bike sat outside in the rain all night, unfortunately, but it was what it was. And woke up in the morning, prepped and ready for another day out on the trails. And I think that day there, the first part of the day was pretty good. I really started to chew through my tyre at that stage. The rocky shale was killing the tyre that came with the bike, the Metzeler. And yeah, it was really starting to notice it on the shaly hills that I just was starting to lose traction a bit more. We did that long stretch of about 30 to 40 k's coming across the high country and the plains across the top of the hills there. And yeah, pretty much after that, the bike started to get a bit boggy, and I probably realistically should have changed the spark plug at that stage and decided to, you know, get the thing running a little bit nicer. I did have the opportunity, which is bloody cold, and I just didn't want to get around to doing it. Saw some amazing places on that trip, and yeah, the bike still ran fine, got me everywhere I needed to be. It just needed that little bit more of a rev. It just was refusing to lug as much. It was just wanting to sort of just, yeah, stall a little bit easier than it had normally, which it very rarely wants to stall. It's one of the best bikes that I've ever ridden, where I don't have to stress about it stalling when I'm just chugging along up hills and stuff. It's magnificent that way. And then throw in a hydraulic clutch that, you know, you don't have to work super hard on. It is really cool. So from there, it was a really cool second day. Loaded up, came home, and done a couple of trails since, and some other different types of trails, where not so much through the mud and things like that, but some more shaly little hills and trails and rivers and stuff, which was really cool with my brother. And you know, we got the old DR350 out, and it was fun to see an old bike just cruising around and chasing him throughout the day, and that was really fun. More recently, got out to a mate's place. I put a new set of Dunlop AT81s on the bike, which were a bit more soft, a little softer, and was hoping to get a lot more traction out of these out in the bush and out, and headed out, did a trail on these, and with a mate Rod, and you know, I really didn't feel that much difference from the Metzlers, and maybe I just had the wrong pressures in the tyres on the day and played around with a bit of those, and maybe my riding style was a bit off that day, but I really didn't feel like I had quite any additional front end traction that I had previously, which I was really hoping to improve on. It was one of the things that I want to improve moving forwards. From there, I did a bit of a grass track with my brother again. I do a lot of riding with my younger brother on his RMX 450, and yeah, hit the grass track out in the at a friend's place locally, and conditions were absolutely mint. Like, it'd been raining for about a week. It was freezing cold, but geez, the conditions were magic. There was just the right amount of moisture in the soil, and this thing hooked up that day. It was pretty wild and pretty fun, and it was awesome just cruising around and having a ball, and actually throwing this thing around a bit more on the open grass track. A nice little jump in the middle of the track too, which, you know, was perfect for hitting that on this, and had no issues suspension wise hitting those jumps or anything. I've kind of dropped about 6 or 7 kilos since I bought the bike, so I'm pretty light at the moment, and probably about the right weight for the way that it sprung currently, whereas it was a little bit softer at the start when I first got on the bike. Yeah, so anyway, that's what I've done on it so far. The only real changes I've done to the bike is I've thrown on a real basic pipe guard, and Acerbis bash plate, which I love. It's been awesome. There's a heap of marks in it from when we were doing the high country, where I reckon a few rocks might have cracked some cases. So I'm glad I had that running. Other than that, and a new set of tyres and a sweet looking set of graphics from Holeshothog Moto graphics out of Ballarat there. Yeah, it's pretty much all I've really done to the bike. I've just been servicing it a heap, making sure that, you know, changing the filters regularly, dropping the oil every probably 6 to 7 hours, depending on the riding I'm doing. Yeah, greasing everything as per normal. Had it serviced by the local dealer at about 15 hours, and yeah, so far I can't fault it. Nothing's broken on the bike. It's been really, really good. No issues with the TPI that a lot of people speak about. So far so good, and yeah, definitely no issues. Running 98 octane fuel out here in Australia, and it's been really, really good. Like I said, no issues so far. So what would I like to do to the bike? Really thinking about getting a TSP head, like a mild compression head for the bike, and an ECU remap. There is a little bit of a lull I find between the bottom end and the top end, where it kind of sometimes hits a bit of a flat spot. It could be my imagination, I don't know. That's how I feel. Like there's a little bit of a gap, and if I'm not quite in that power range in the right spot, especially on places like a motocross track where it's probably a little bit more important, yeah, I lose that little bit of power. So I've been looking at one of those. They're about, I think, about $800 here in Australia. So I'm pretty interested in getting one of those, a local company as well, which is awesome, and getting one of those put on. Getting the suspension set up, so I'll go see Jace at JCP and get the suspension actually set up properly. That could make all the difference for me moving forwards as well, with getting me a bit more comfortable on the bike. So far I haven't even changed the map switch. I've just been riding with a normal map. I don't think I need less power anywhere, or a more milder power so far. I find I can ride the bike the way I want it, other than that little odd flat spot in the middle there every now and again. It catches me out if I'm just not in the right gear, and I just lose that little bit of power. From there, I don't think there'd be too much else to do at this stage. I think that'll be my modifications to start. Maybe a few more protective bits and pieces around the bike just to look after. Another set of handguards. These ones are getting pretty smashed up from the trees and stuff. And maybe a LED light for when the light gets a little bit darker at the end of a night and at the end of a trail. But all in all, I'm super happy with this bike. For the majority of riding I do, it's perfect. So it's low maintenance, don't have to mix fuel, which isn't really that hard, but you know what, when you're out and about and going away for a couple of days, it's just one less thing to have to worry about. Electric start's been fine so far, you know, super happy with it. I like the way that it feels, the way that it rides. I love the power. Yeah, it's been a really, really fun bike so far, and I can't complain too much about it really. Yeah, parts are amazing. Nothing's worn out, nothing's needed to be replaced other than the tyres, and that's just normal maintenance, you know. Those types of things, and yeah, no, it's been an awesome bike, and I highly recommend. The one thing I probably didn't do that well was the high country. I think if I was going to do more of that on a regular basis, I might buy something like a 10RA 700 or even a 500, you know, TE 500. I think it's what they call TE 500 or FE 500 or 501 or a KTM 500, and put a big long range tank on it and stuff like that. Something I can just lug around and, you know, don't have to stress too much about just throttling the thing when it's getting a little bit rich. So anyway, all in all, great bike, love it. Hope you enjoy my review, and I'll do another one at about the 12-18 month mark or something like that when I've done a rebuild and maybe chuck some new parts on the bike. So anyway, like, subscribe to the videos if you want to see plenty of content. I'm posting videos on a pretty regular basis, and yeah, keen to get out and do more trails. Awesome. Cheers guys.